Hey everybody, I'm Thurman,
And I'm Lorraine.
and together we are
Two
people who love the
the
Camino.
Camino.
And the last little while, 7 weeks actually, we've been walking through memories of the Camino 2014, 1 week at a time, because we took 7 weeks to walk it. And tonight we're just going to go on from that a little bit and talk about that blankety blank Camino. Everybody seems to have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the Camino. So that blankety blank Camino, 5 things we hated and 5 things we loved. We're going to try not to be too long tonight. You can't tell where I start and she stops tonight. Did you notice that? We're both wearing, well, you wonder why we're almost dressed in black. Anyway, let's go on with this tonight. The Camino meme, first of all, when you've walked as far as you can.
Take another step.
Take another step. Good suggestion for Camino and a great suggestion for life. So we're going to start off with the 5 things that I said here that we hated, but we didn't really hate it. What we're going to call it?
Struggled with.
Things that we struggled with on the Camino, and some that we hated, but mostly that we struggled with. So we'll start off talking about those. And number 5 of the 5 things that we hated, actually we struggled with, is going to be cities. Why is that?
Because I'm a country girl.
Because she's a country girl through and through. Born in the city of Toronto, moved out of there
when I was 4.
She can't even remember living there.
Nope.
And she's been a country girl ever since. And so I've never lived in a city either. And we just found that when you get there, there's a little bit of a different vibe to it. They're busier. You have to watch when you step out in the middle of the road. One thing we liked about walking in both France and Spain is the traffic was very courteous, and they'd actually come right up behind you, and you'd never know there was a car there. You wouldn't toot or anything, except if you get in the city. And even there, they were. I can remember thinking that we were going to stop and let a car go by, but we'd be approaching the sidewalk, and he'd see us from about 20 feet away and bam onto the brakes like that and stop, and we'd walk out in front of him. But anyway, the cities, the vibe was kind of a little bit more than we liked. But anything else about the cities?
Hard to find what we were looking for,
yeah,
food and stuff.
Right.
And if we did find it, it was more expensive.
A little bit more expensive, and not that was going to make us or break us. But remember the night in Lyon when we went out for dinner with Marlon, and we all ordered, but none of us had any idea what we ordered because we were at a place that didn't cater to pilgrims. None of us read the menu well, and it was a surprise when we got there. So number 5, we have kind of a struggling with attitude towards cities. Number 4, what do you think that might be?
How about blisters?
Blisters. All right. First one, we didn't have many at all. My third Camino, I had major blister and bruises on top of the blister. So basically, things we struggled with that we're going to talk about here is not just blisters, but health-related things. So you struggled with pain and stuff like that. So we're going to come back to that later in one of our other ones. But the first couple, actually, I said last week that we were going to talk about 5 things we didn't like about the Camino, and we've struggled to come up with 5 things. So we put blisters in just because everybody says blisters, right?
There wasn't very much that we didn't like. We struggled.
We struggled to find things we didn't like, and because even the things we didn't like, it really was part of the experience.
Didn't hurt us.
And together with the things we did like, it made it made the experience.
Nothing was a surprise. We knew what to expect. So.
Except this one. This one, we really did struggle with this next one. So number 3, any idea what number 3 is going to be? Yeah, you can read it. Sure, you can cheat.
The last 2 kilometers of every walk.
Every day. It just seemed that it didn't matter if we walked 28. Our bodies knew we were going 28, and they started to rebel at 25 or 26. And on the occasional time we walked 7 kilometers, The same thing.
There was a reason for the seven
Yeah,
kilometers,
but
though,
the
to
same
begin
thing.
with,
It
so
was
it was still very tough.
yeah. It just seemed no matter what we walked. I remember day number 2 coming down into Zubiri, and the sign said something like four more kilometers, and at home like that's
That's a piece of cake.
30 minutes, 32, 35 minutes or something at home for me. And we walked, and it was downhill, and it just seemed that the last 2 kilometers every day for 3 separate Caminos was always a little bit too long. So those of you who've walked the Camino, maybe you can understand what we're talking about. Start off in the morning, you're vibrant, you're ready to go. At least I was, right? Well, 50% of us were vibrant and ready to go, right? But the last 2 kilometers every day. It almost always seemed that the last 2 kilometers was either a good uphill or a good downhill or a good hot walk or something to make it hard. So the next one that we struggled with, we really did struggle with the next one. So I'm going to say what this is. We struggle with loud people on the Camino. Loud people. And by loud, we mean 2 or 3 different things. So the first one that we listed here, right here.
After Saria is where a lot of people started. So for 700 kilometers, we've had peace and
Yeah,
quiet and
yeah,
walking basically alone. And suddenly you're walking with many people.
yeah. I remember writing a note to my friend Marlon one day. Said, "Marlon, your Irish ladies have found us," because there were a lot of Irish people walked the Camino, and a lot of Irish people, particularly, walked the last 100 kilometers,
And a
and
lot of tour buses.
a lot of tour buses, yeah. So it was totally different. So it's not that those people were so loud individually. It's just that the whole thing
In
got louder.
comparison to what we
Right,
had been.
everything got louder because there were so many people at that time. So loud people. The other loud people that really did bother us, and I think I might still. It's 6 years since this first time. I think I might still be tempted to wring somebody's neck if I could get hold of them. And that is the people who rustle their plastic bags early in the morning. And
We're talking like 4:30,
Yeah.
5 o'clock. They decide to leave early. That's fine, but take your plastic bags somewhere else.
Yeah, I
to
mean
pack
we've left at that time, not often,
them.
but
No.
we've left early in the morning before other people on occasion. And we would, because we're perfect pilgrims, right? We would always go outside or take our bags the night before and get them ready, so that all we had to do when we get up in the morning was grab a bag, grab another little something, sleeping bag or whatever, and sneak out the door and prepare everything out there. But there were a few people who just insisted on doing everything right there beside their bed, and they'd put their flashlights on their head as well, so that they wouldn't have to turn on the overhead lights, and then they'd swing those flashlights around like that, and it would catch you in the eyes, and okay. So the loud people after Saria, the loudness of the trail after Saria, and the loud people on the early morning bag rituals, rustlers. Anybody else? Loud people?
The loud people coming in late at night after some of us were already
Yeah,
to bed.
yeah, and I wasn't even thinking so much for late at night when I wrote that down as the quiet times. Like normally when you go into the sleeping part of the albergue at any time of day in the afternoon,
There's a
people
lot of
respect
nappers
it. Yeah,
because they've been up early, they've walked hard,
yeah.
they need a rest.
But occasionally a group of people would come in, like bikers, for example. Like they're all traveling. They're like wolves. They travel in packs, right? And the bikers would come in, and they're excited, and they're talking, and not really loud, but they're just talking and making extra noises. And so loud people. Can you tell we had problems with loud? I think we were talking before about things like that, the blisters, and saying we were joking. We really didn't hate those things, but now that we're on to loud people and stuff like that, I think I'm seeing something come up here. Let's see. Okay, so loud people. That's number 2 that we're talking about. Oh yeah, and then there were people with just kind of generally what I've called loud spirits. they're boisterous, they're loud, they talk loud everywhere they are, they want to be heard. And actually, my wife said of one of them one day, she was a loud woman. We had walked to try. We had taken an extra. There was two ways out of town one day, and she and a group of people were walking rather slowly in front of us, and we went an extra block out of our way to try to get by them. So we were ahead of them. And Lorraine said, when she looked behind and saw them, you said what? Do you remember?
Don't you ever sometimes wish that people would miss an arrow, head off the wrong direction?
An arrow, remember, an arrow is what you're following across Spain. And Lorraine was wishing bad things on this woman, because she really did have what we're calling here a loud spirit. So that's number 4, the loud spirit. Number, I'm going the wrong direction here. That was number 2, actually. Okay, loud people. So here's number 1. 5 things we hated or struggled with. Surprise, surprise. You might not guess the number 1 thing that we struggled with.
You might guess it if you watched last week.
Oh, yeah?
Right. Because
Right.
we mentioned it.
Right. We didn't like walking. Lorraine said last week, I think it was after we were done, or maybe it was on the thing, she said, I loved the Camino, I just hated the walking. And that's not completely true either, but there were some things that we didn't like about walking.
Some days it just was so hot.
Yeah.
We tried to leave early enough and stop before the heat of the midday. But a time or two we got caught out
The first 2.5 weeks specifically was like 30 to 35 degrees in the afternoon. One day we did get caught out there, and that was a bad day. So we tried, like she said, we tried not to do that. But we didn't. We struggled with walking in the heat. You struggled with.
I struggled with being sore,
walking in pain, and I struggled with adjusting my pace to keep back with you when you walk slow, which made you struggle with the fact that
feeling bad that I was holding him back.
Oh, life's a struggle, isn't it? when you're together.
But on our second Camino, he hurt his legs.
One day, come on now,
One day he was suffering
really bad.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. It was like he suffered with, he dealt with my pain for the whole Camino, and he had a day or two, and I'm like, how do I deal with this?
You have no idea how to show compassion, do you? So there's the 5 things that we hated, didn't hate, the 5 things that we struggled with. Cities, blisters and or pain, the last 2 kilometers every day. Loud people. I think that actually might be number 1. We put the walking as number 1 here, but I'm thinking that the loud people probably really was number 1. So there it is. That's the on this blankety blank Camino, the love-hate relationship with the blankety blank Camino. That's the 5 things that we hated and or struggled with. But thanks be to God, there are 5 things at least that we loved about this Camino thing. So I'll just let you talk about that for a second while I try to find it on our screen.
So like we struggled to find 5 things that we did not like about the Camino, we struggled to narrow it down to our best 5 things.
Yeah, really.
Because we loved so much about it.
Yeah, the whole thing, we've said a dozen times, 100 times, 200, I don't know how many, thousands of times we've said that you take 48 painful days and put them together, it makes a great experience.
That's right.
So beauty everywhere, whether it is, we've got some pictures here for you.
This is up in the Pyrenees Mountains.
Day number 1, 28 kilometers, hot day, still beautiful, right? It's our anniversary.
It was.
Happy anniversary, baby. So whether it be crossing the Pyrenees Mountains, and Lorraine was anxious to get to the Albergue that night, so she was always way ahead of me on that night. So whether there's beauty in the Pyrenees Mountains, we had a beautiful day to walk across it. The friends that walked a day or so after us that we met later walked in fog, so they were glad to see our pictures. But whether it be in the Pyrenees Mountains or the beauty of an approaching rainstorm that didn't happen, this one. It's one of my favorite pictures, actually, on the Meseta. Meseta is the high plain of Spain and flats largely, and the guidebooks sometimes say boring, but we didn't find them boring at all. So there's another picture of the beauty of the Meseta. The next one is going to be go ahead.
The shore, the coast.
The coastline. This
Yeah.
this was off of the Camino a little bit. One of our hospitalerios in the village of Se on the coast of Spain took us about 8 kilometers south of her town to a beautiful, absolutely stunning waterfalls. The only river in Spain, or maybe the only river in Europe, that empties into the Atlantic Ocean via a waterfall. I think is the called claim to fame for this little river just below Se, and it was absolutely a stunning day. So there on the coast, and then here's another picture on the coast at Finisterre with the sun getting ready to go down. So all of those type of things. I mean, we look through our pictures and try to choose 8 to put in here as we talk about beauty. Here's me sitting on top of the mountains at Ocibrero, and one more of Ocibrero.
Doing your laundry can also be beautiful.
Even the laundry looks beautiful. So that's number 5 of the things that we liked loved about the Camino. Number 4.
Little surprises.
Little surprises are everywhere on the Camino, even like tiny little surprises. Tiny little surprises will bring you great joy.
This was our almost daily treat, especially on our first Camino. And lots of times,
Our guilty pleasure.
I would have gone for a nap. At the end of the day, I was done. And after a little while, he tapped me on the shoulder. Here's your ice cream.
Magnum ice cream in Spain. I don't think we found it the same in Canada, have we? No. So it's the revels like this. Ice cream sandwiches were bigger. Some of them came in 2 different. It was absolutely an expensive guilty pleasure because it can't cost about €2.50, I think, or something like that. So €5, that's $8 Canadian. But some things are worth it. This next one, I think the next one coming up is Lorraine's very special guilty pleasure.
Oh, this was so delicious. And I went and bought this when I was by myself the day that I found out I was a grandmother for the 11th time.
This was at a bakery just beside the last stamp, the albergue that we tried to stay at when we wanted to stay in the middle of Santiago. And remember, we were in and out of Santiago 5 weeks the first time, and in and out of Santiago 3 weeks the second time, and in and out of Santiago about 2 weeks the third time. So we're getting to know this place, and when we wanted to stay right in town, when we wanted to stay more cheaply, we stayed across the gully at the Seminario Menor. But when we wanted to stay in town closer to the action, we stayed at the last stamp, and this was a little bakery just beside that. And these were cheap.
Oh yeah,
like 110. I think 110. I think, and so and bigger than it looks like there as well. Oh, I put on the calories. So she didn't just. If she's trying to let on she just ate those when the day our grandchild was born.
No, I knew about them before that. I just knew that was a good way to celebrate.
Right. And speaking of little surprises, here's a guy named Jules, from Germany that I met on our second Camino. In Siraki, so early in the second Camino, and this picture was taken. I had no idea that this was going to happen. This picture was taken over a year later when we just happened to cross each other's paths again in Finisterre, and I had bought him a dinner early in our second Camino, and later in the second Camino we bumped into each other again, and he had prepared a meal for us. And then just out of the blue, and that happened more than once with different people. You had a lady as well that from Germany as well. Maybe the Germans are looking out for us. I don't know. So the little surprises. So number 5 things that we liked the best were
Beauty.
Everywhere. Number 4, little
Little
surprises that we
surprises.
run into. Number 3 of the things that we liked on the Camino, especially the first one, was the sense of anticipation. Right? Uh, what would the day's walk be like? Where are we going to sleep? Where are we going to eat? That type of thing. Because on the first Camino, we didn't make any plans ahead of time. Right?
Right.
We'd done a lot of reading, so we knew generally what was coming, but we hadn't done any specific reading, so we didn't know, for example, what city was coming next or anything like that. I remember somebody saying one day, "Are you going to get to Logroño tomorrow?" And I said, "I don't even know what Logroño is." And come to find out, it's a fairly large city, and I don't know, around the 100-kilometer marker, and
You even wrote a song. Somewhere up ahead.
somewhere up ahead, there's another strange bed. That was it, because we just did not know where that was October the 2nd, 2014, by the way, that I wrote that. We had just left Ocibrero, and we're walking towards Tria Castella, although we didn't know that at the time. We were just walking to see where we ended up to. So a sense of anticipation, especially on the first Camino. Second Camino, we walked the same route as we did the first time. Route, see how I did that there? Walked the same route as we did the first time. So the anticipation was a little bit less, but there was still some because we didn't know.
We didn't know who we were going to meet, and we love meeting the people.
Yeah, or people we'd already met. You didn't know if you'd see them again that day, and it was always fun when you bumped into people. So number 5 was a sense of beauty. Number 4 was the little surprises. Number 3, the things that we loved, was a sense of anticipation. Number 2 of the things we loved. Can you read that?
The sense of accomplishment.
The sense of accomplishment. Daily accomplishments, and we do have a few pictures here. So daily accomplishments like?
Sometimes the path was rugged.
Yeah. This was coming down into Ponferrada. It's a rough walk. You can see that there on the screen if you're looking at that. It's a rough day. The day before that had been a steep decline as well for the last part of the day. So almost when you get to the bottom of some of these hills, it's a sense of accomplishment and gratitude that you still have all your knees and all your ankles and all of those things still intact. So whether at the end of a day, going down, or sometimes just this was also the end of a day, and that's walking up. We got to the little town of Porto Moran after Sauria, so we're in 40 or 45 days by this time, and you get to this town, and the last thing you have to do is walk up about 50 steps. So even that's a sense of I did it. I remember standing there waiting for you to get up those steps, trying to take your picture, and this time obviously you beat me. You beat me up. And then not only a sense of accomplishment on a daily thing, but it's still kind of fun to look back and see all of those. Are those red? I think they are.
They are red.
All of those red markers on there are pictures of, I guess I won't mess with that. That's places that we stayed. Places that we walked to. We started up there on the top right of the screen at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. We ended at the top left of the screen at Finisterre and Murcia on the coast of Spain. And those are the 48 or 50, more than 48 because we also walked to the coast. So 53 or 4 places that we walked to as we got there. And it's kind of fun to look at a world map and choose a country and say,
I walked across that country.
In fact, when we left Spain and headed back to Barcelona to catch the plane home, it took 9 hours for the train to get back to Pamplona, and it had taken us 45 days to walk from Pamplona over there. So that's a sense of accomplishment was very much one of the things that we loved about the Camino. So that's number 2. And number 1 of the things that we loved about the Camino.
You probably already can guess it because we've mentioned it lots of times. We love the people.
People, right? By the way, that's the only word in the English language that has that style of spelling. Two.
Okay.
If you're ever doing a word puzzle and you see that form of a word, a letter at the end and at the end. The second letter and the fifth letter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Second letter and the sixth. I'm getting off course.
Yeah, really.
The second letter and the sixth letter the same. The first letter and the fourth letter the same, and two separate letters for the third and the fifth. It'll always be people if you're doing. That's the only word in the English language that has that pattern. That's the word I was trying to stick for.
Okay.
So we love the people, not only because of the pattern of the words, but just because they've made a huge impact on our lives. I know we're going to forget some of you here in this, but here's some people from Camino #1 that have made an impact on our lives. Marlon.
Told you I was going to go blank.
Marlon, our #1. I would say this was our #1 friend from all Caminos. Not to put anybody else down, but Marlon, you made a huge impact on both of our lives with your gratitude for life and your humility in approaching life. And here's Marlon at the wedding of his daughter Mary, who also walked with us the last 4 or 5 days of that Camino. So Marlon, hats off to you. Carmel from Montreal. We're not going to talk about all these people very much because we have over the course of things, but Carmel, thank you for your part in our Camino.
Chabi and
Carmen, who gave us a wonderful gift at the end of the Camino.
They let us stay in his mother's empty house for a week.
On the Mediterranean coast, and spent a wonderful week with these great friends who don't speak much English and we don't speak much Spanish, but somehow we're able to communicate and had a great time together. John and Kathy Similink from... Yeah, you're right. Minneapolis, Minnesota. They became grandparents the last night, the day before the penultimate night together when we were in Opadruzo. They woke up the next morning and they were grandparents, I think, for the first time, maybe not, but we visited them in their house. So this is a picture. Most of these are pictures from people's Facebook profile pictures right now. This one's not. This is Cyril from England, an Irish guy, but he lives in England now. How do we meet Cyril?
Met him at the
seminary Menor, where we both were in Santiago, where we both were all staying for several nights. And again down at the Pilgrim House. I didn't put the Pilgrim House in here, but a shout out to our friends at the Pilgrim House who run a ministry in Santiago where people gather at the end of their stay. And we met Cyril both there and we stayed with him at this huge albergue and just became good friends. We never saw him again. I almost met up with him again on a third Camino, but missed him by one night as he was also walking. Cyril is an aficionado of the Camino, having done it several times. He did it in 14 days at one point, and he did it a lot slower than that as well. And so I've enjoyed getting to know Cyril a little bit better over Facebook as well. Nancy from Portland, Oregon. Nancy, we're sorry that we missed you this last time when we were going up through there. COVID put a barrier up so we couldn't get a stop and see you during that time through Portland the last little while.
Helen
from Australia, whom we've told you too many times her story already.
Jacques
from Montreal. All great friends from our first Camino and had a lasting impact on our life. Here's some from our second Camino now.
Philip
Philip and
and
Jackie, the
Jackie.
Dohertys from Ireland. Did we ever have fun talking with them
Oh,
in a
we
noisy
did.
room, right? The louder the more important the story is, the louder they talk,
And the
and
faster.
the faster
Mhm.
and the broader his accent in particular gets. But we had some great nights with Jacqueline and Jackie and Philip on the second Camino. Tony and Rosalind from Australia were part of our favorite night of all on the second Camino as well.
Judith
Judith from
from
Germany.
Germany.
Judith wasn't feeling all that well, had to stay back, and so we were very surprised and pleased when we were able to meet her again and finish there. Vivian and his wife Genevieve, also from Australia. There were three couples from Australia that didn't know each other originally, but met up on the trail, and we happened to meet up with them as well near the end of the second Camino. And this great couple we happened to meet again on the third Camino, completely by surprise, and they took us out for supper. Right,
Mm-hmm.
so there's them.
Kathy and Lee.
Kathy and Lee from Santiago. I visited them once. You visited a
A
couple
couple of times. Every time we go to visit our daughter, we look up Kathy and Lee too.
Again, we missed that this time because of COVID, but they were probably along the second Camino our longest friends. We met them early on, and we're still hanging around with them at Finisterre. Actually, we got a room together at Finisterre for one night. This is Mia from Korea. I just got to tell you a quick little story about Mia from Korea because way back about 4 weeks before I met her here in Finisterre, which is the end of the world, I had spent a night, and Lorraine had gone to bed, and I'd spent a night talking with a group of young people, and that was the last time we saw them. The next morning they passed us, and we greeted them again, but that was the last time. So about 4, maybe even 5 weeks before this, and I didn't know that the conversation had been what it was at all or anything, but we got off the bus and finished there, and I kind of sensed something coming towards me, and I turned around, and there was this little girl running at me, and she just gave me a great big hug. And talking about little surprises, maybe this could have gone back there as well. She just gave me a great big hug and said, "Do you remember me?" And I looked and I said, "No." And then she said her name, Mia, and started to talk about that night in Los Arcos a long time ago. And then I remembered, and she began to quote our conversation almost word for word and told me what a great impact that conversation had had on her life. So Mia becomes one of the people on our second Camino that was that made it very, very special. And I still expect sometime in some airport in the world somewhere I still look over my shoulder to see if there's somebody running up to me to give me a great big hug and say, "Hey, do you remember me? I'm Mia from Korea." So far, it hasn't happened the second time.
Esbjorn.
Esbjorn from Sweden. We had some great 3 or 4 nights with him and Regina from Germany. The four of us spent some good time together, and so that was a very special time as well.
John
and Meg. Also, that was another group of the people from Australia, and she has the most infectious laugh of anybody I've ever met, and we've become good long distance friends with them since that time. So there's people from the second Camino. One more Camino to go here, and there's not as many of them, but here's
John and Sheila.
John and Sheila from Dr. John from Murphy's, California. We walked with him, had a couple of great evenings with him, and then met her. She joined him in Santiago at the end. Visited them right at the beginning of COVID, and left him. He's the last man I shook a hand with on March the 17th until about 3 days ago. I shook hands again with somebody else.
And Linda from Tucson.
It's Linda from Tucson, who we met on the second. Let's talk about little surprises. We met on the second Camino, but didn't really get to know her. And then on the third Camino, she walked into the Pilgrim House, and there we were, and she recognized us, and we've become great friends with Linda since that time. Spent some time in her house with her, and at a retreat with her in Tucson areas. And so hope you're feeling well, Linda. She was undergoing some surgeries after we left her that last time, and fell at the retreat we're at and broke her foot. So hope you're doing well down there, Linda. And I put this little girl in because I just like to try to pronounce her name. Her name is Rena. First it was Gina, I thought, and then she told, and we never were able to pronounce her name correctly, and Harina Kozalev. We had a great day walking with you, Harina, and able to meet her again in Santiago as well.
And another little surprise was we met our friend from our own town,
Sandy Lane. And we kind of manufactured this surprise because we knew she was walking up the Portuguese. We knew that approximately when she was going to arrive in Santiago. So we manufactured this surprise and had a great evening with Sandy. But it's kind of fun when people from so close meet each other so far away. In fact, Sandy, when she learned that we were walking on the first Camino, met us one day, the first time we ever met her, and talk to you about the books.
She had a stack of books. She said, my dream is to someday walk the Camino. So she gave us all her books to read, and we gave them back to her, and her dream finally came true.
And Lorraine read all of those books, yeah. And we really, because of that gesture, we felt we knew the Camino as well as one could before getting there. So thank you, Sandy, for that generous gesture to us. Bill Innes began to talk with me after I walked the first Camino. I'd never met him. He called me on the phone one day, started to talk about it. He walked the Camino after that, and I kept in touch with him. And then when we put up on the fact that we were going back for our third Camino, all of a sudden, we were flying out of Toronto on August the 22nd. And I'd never met this guy before, but all of a sudden on my Facebook it said, guess who else is flying out of Toronto on August the 22nd? And it was Bill Innes, and we met right there at the airport in Toronto, and then stayed together the first night in Porto, Portugal. And Bill, I'm going to tell a little story on you. Bill, I hope your wife's not listening. Bill used the ladies' shower in Porto, Portugal that night. Didn't know he was doing that, but there he did it anyway. So now the secret's out of the bag. And Cynthia from Mexico, whom we also met where?
At an airport.
The Toronto airport. Yeah. And then she noticed our backpacks and came up to talk to us. She was on her way to do her first Camino, and we met her again as she finished in Santiago. So there it is tonight. That's the people, the things that we love about the Camino are the people. Number one of all of the things that we love, right? So, the Camino. A love-hate relationship with the blankety-blank Camino. 5 things we hated or at least struggled with, and
5 things we loved.
5 things we love. One more Camino meme for you. The secret to contentment on your life Camino is
accumulate small and happy events.
God bless you all. Those are the 5 things we liked and didn't like about our Camino. Going to come back one more time next week and talk about the 5 weeks we spent around Santiago after we finished our first Camino. Thanks everybody for watching. God bless you all. Good night.